Well, a lot of us have suspected our smartphones lose battery life as they age and even wondered whether the tech giants of Silicon Valley deliberately power down older versions of our phones. But do they? Dr. Robert Merkel is a lecturer in the Clayton School of Information Technology at Monash University. He says there are many reasons our phones and other devices seem less snappy. He joins me now from Melbourne. Good to see you. Now, Apple has made a rather interesting admission on just this topic in the past 24 hours or so. Can you bring us up to date? What's it had to say?
Apple has announced that in a software update early this year, they introduced a feature that if the battery in an iPhone was degraded to the point where it wasn't able to produce enough power to power the phone at full speed, rather than run the risk of the phone switching off unexpectedly, they would slow the processor of the phone down so that the phone would keep operating rather than run the risk of it shutting down. But this had the effect that older phones were in some circumstances running noticeably slower than when they were new.
So this has been received with interest by many smartphone users around the world. Is that plausible in your view? Can battery life impede further upgrades of software? Rather the other way around, can further upgrades of software impede battery life?
Yes, it can, and yes, it has. But in this particular case, what has happened is that batteries lose their, as batteries age, their ability to hold charge reduces over time, but also the peak power they can produce also reduces. And this was the problem that they were having, that the older phones didn't have enough power to run the processors at full speed. So rather than having the phone cut out, they chose to slow the processors down.
Why do you think Apple's admitting to this now?
Because some people who work in the technology press and some users actually collected some statistics to show that the peak performance of older phones was slower than newer phones.
So do you think this is something that happens to other branded phones as well?
I strongly suspect it does. Certainly battery life on older phones degrades, and I have noticed with older phones personally sometimes that when they get close to the minimum charge but not completely flat, they will simply cut out when you try and do something CPU intensive on them, like for instance play a game.
The cynics among us might suggest that the companies just want us all to buy new phones.
Look, I think it's reasonable to have a phone slow down rather than cut out, but I will say that Apple have been less than transparent about this in a number of ways. One, not publicising the fact that they were doing this when they released the update, rather than waiting for somebody to discover it. And furthermore, when your phone's performance is slowed down under these circumstances, you don't necessarily get notified that it's the case and how to fix it. Apple could have chosen to, as part of the software update, included a notification saying we've had to slow your phone down because the battery is no longer capable of supplying full power all the time. If you want to avoid this happening, go and get a new battery put in. They chose not to do so.
Well, just one final quick question for you. For those in the audience who might have an older phone and they might be wondering, should they update their software when pushed to do so?
Well, in general, yes, you should almost always upgrade your phone operating system when the manufacturer prompts you to do so, because of the risk of security problems with phones that aren't updated. It is unfortunate that Apple has arguably broken trust with their consumers in this case, but in general, always always install updates from the manufacturer. It's much safer to do so.
Dr. Robert Merck, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.